right. We'll call the February meeting of the Hartsville-Trousdale County Planning Commission to order. Shuttle, would you please call the roll?
Heather Bay, present. Eddie Coleman, Katie Dillon, here. Mitch Gregory, Arthur Harper.
Here.
John Kerr.
Here.
Rosalie Huntington.
Here.
David Nolan.
Here.
David Thomas.
Here.
Calvin.
Here.
Okay.
The David in unison. You have had your copy of the minutes for some time now and had time to look over those. Has anybody noticed any corrections, changes, or anything that needs to be updated on those? If not, I would accept a motion to approve. Welch, motion to approve. David Thomas, seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Motion passes unanimously. All right, our first item under there is a rezoning request. This is from Barbara Williams. She would like to rezone track from A1 to R1. That's at 1880 Highway 25 West of 3.2 acres. And she would like to subdivide that into 6 civil districts. I got a feeling, Mr. Mike, is that what you're here for, or Jim representing y'all? I'm here. You're here. Come on up, sir. One. That's you're the guest of honor. Just kind of tell it, well, first tell us your name so Shudder can get it in the hand. I understand. That's what I'm doing. We'll do kind of like we do everybody, and just tell us what you want to do.
I'm just here on behalf of my niece. Sister passed away, and that's her property. It's my niece inherited. She lives in Delaware. So I'm just here on behalf of her. She'd like to. The house is sort of in the middle of 3.2 acres. There's a lot on either side. If it surveys out correctly properly, she'd like to divide it into those 3 lots. So.
So everybody know what we're talking about is right there on Highway 25. Beautiful land, just real level and everything. We all know where it's at. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Carey while he's up here? No questions? So far. Discussion?
There is a rezoning sign out there on the property so that as you're traveling 25, you are going to be able to see it.
Discussion? Any motions? Thomas?
I'd like to make a motion to send this with a favorable approval.
Have a motion by Mr. Thomas to send this to the county commission with a favorable recommendation. Do I, I'm sorry, who was it? Heather? Second by Ms. Day. Now, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Does pass unanimously. Mike, now that this goes, they've explained that to you, it goes now to the county commission, and they have 2 readings. And the soonest it could get completely done would be in the county commission meeting in March. All right. Next, we have a plat amendment request by Terry and Deanna Cox. This is for a lot ratio variance on 2160 and 2190 Highway 141 North. This is to adjust lot lines, and this lies in the 7th Civil District.
I'll try to understand what we're trying to do with that one. Okay, yes, so I think we may have got things wrong from your end, and I apologize about that. This was not meant to be a planning plat. This is just an exhibit for the variant, to explain the variance that we are asking for. Okay, so I wanted to clarify that with you, because y'all may have got some minutes showing that there were like 50 things missing off the plat, and if it wasn't planning plat, to be totally correct, but that's not what we're trying to do right here. So the Coxes have inherited 2 tracts of land that exist, that have residences on them, and hired us to survey it, and we have surveyed it, and the boundary line between the 2 of them misses one of the residences by about 2 feet. So they would like to adjust the line. These lots are grandfathered in, they've been in there since the original parcel was in there at least since the 70s, and it was divided back in the 90s. The issue is, I don't know when it came in, anyway, we have in the subdivision regs, we have the 5-to-1 ratio now. So there's no way I can adjust the line and maintain, well, it doesn't beat 5-to-1 at the moment. So there's not a way I can make any adjustments and meet the 5-to-1 rule. So we are asking for a variance to the 5-to-1 rule, is what we're asking for. So we can put the line and center it up between the trailers, and at that point, we can meet setbacks, because there's a little over 40 feet between. So I can center up a line between them and meet setbacks, but it will not meet the 5-to-1.
Anybody have any questions for Jim? You like to comment?
No, so you are correct. I reviewed it thinking that y'all were going for a subdivision.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine. I'm sorry you wasted your time. Ms. Rosalie and I will try to do a better job of expressing in the future what we are shooting for. So.
Actually, they did, talk about doing the variance, and our forms do not limit itself to even request a variance in the planning, so that will be updated. The sign has been out there on the property that they are requesting a property variance, so that is correct. And I have received several different calls, concerning this property. Initially, people were thinking that they were asking for a rezoning. And I told them that no, it is a property variance that they're looking for and what they're hoping to do.
Questions? Board discussion, Mr. Thomas?
Do we have the authority to grant a variance?
Is that under our law?
The subdivision regulations, the planning commission has the authority to grant variance. If it's not a zone.
So that's why it doesn't go to the board, the BZA, because it's a subdivision. Okay. So it is a matter that we can handle, comes under our purview. Questions for Jim, Ms. Rosalie, or anyone? Yes, sir.
So Jim, the way you proposed the new line
Mhm.
to vary, that's just gonna split even between the 2 houses?
Yes, that's how that line was designed. We just split the difference between the 2 houses. It's gonna be like 21 feet off both of them, just on both sides right there.
On the property that is narrowing, are you still gonna have enough road frontage?
Yes, we held the road frontage, got a minimum down there on the front, and then split the line between the 2 houses to create that triangle.
These houses are occupied now.
They live in one of them. I can't say as to whether, I don't know if they rent it out or if it is occupied.
There is someone in it.
Okay.
It is.
Other questions? Thomas?
So being that this proposed change actually makes it as close to our regulations as possible, I'd like to make a motion to grant this.
Something you finish up. So many read. We can do it. All right. So I have a motion by Mr. Thomas to grant this variance, lot line variance, I guess. Is that what
It's the width, the depth ratio variance.
Okay, to the lot ratio variance line. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Knoll. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Just pass you. Thank you.
I gave you all the comments.
That's right, I know how to do the flag correctly, when I do the drawing. Okay, that's.
Is there anyone else with any, we do have some discussion items to talk about, but is there anyone else that has any business to come before the planning commission tonight that we necessarily get to? Okay, we will move into our discussion items. First is blasting notifications. Last month, we talked about the need for a blasting permit with the new road that was going in out here. And still the possibility of a rock quarry down on 231, since that hearing on that will be coming up in 3 weeks, March, something like that. We were discussing last month about the possible need. I think it's a need to have a blasting permit so that we can lay out for the people of the county, especially those living around these particular areas, some things that they might be alerted to or find out about, or just so that the county officials themselves know that some blasting is going on. You know, it's kind of embarrassing sometimes when you hear a big boom and you call 911 or whoever you call, they don't know what you're talking about. You know, so I think one of the keys to this proposal is that they would be required to notify the county officials and to provide this. And I think that that's a good thing. Other discussion? Thomas?
So, after our last meeting, I reached out to the county attorney and asked for his opinion on whether this body has the authority to be able to do a permit as long as the fee is not attached. His reply to me was, his conclusion is there is no prohibition against it. Therefore, yes, we do have that authority, as long as there's not a fee associated with it.
So
So
only the county commission could
to do a fee.
add a fee to anything.
So what codes and zoning did is we put together this blasting permit that we have in front of us without a fee associated to it. There's, you see a blank block. It should be in your, everyone should have a copy of it.
Go ahead.
Now, as this form sits now, Codes and Zoning voted to send this on to the full commission and to send it to this body. After that vote was taken, some further discussion was had, and it was requested by one of the members that this body consider adding a extra sentence to the paragraph down at the bottom. So after the first sentence, they're suggesting that the sentence, in the event of an operator, in the event of any operator changes on this project, please notify the planning office within 48 hours of the change. There's one, they suggested that we add that warning or that wording into that bottom paragraph, just so that Rosalie's office would be able to have that information if something were to change.
Change the authority on the people
Yeah.
doing the, to notify the county
Yes.
that something has changed and is different than before.
Now, when that suggestion was made, there's a 24 or 48. Talking with Rosalie, 48 seems to be a better time slot, especially if something were to happen, late on Friday. We might be able to get some notice before they start blasting again on Monday. But I'm just bringing that from Codes and Zoning to this body to discuss and whether they want to add it or not.
We think that's.
It'd be a good idea myself.
I think it should be incumbent upon the people, doing the project. Notify, just like they have to get all their things in the road, begin to do things like that. I think it should be incumbent upon them to notify some of the officials of those changes. Is there any problem with that? From y'all's point of view?
No, I mean, we looked into what the state fire marshal requires, and it's very minimum, I don't. In terms of like public noticing of local governments, and then filing.
You had mentioned earlier that you'd found some information out, from the fire marshals. Did you?
Just,
share that with us?
yeah, so I think the questions that this board had asked were related to, you know, what are the blasting requirements the state marshal has, and we went through and documented what the application, I'm sure Rosalie found their application as well, is collected from the blasters, but then we asked some questions that weren't really apparent on the application in regards to what are the requirements for noticing the jurisdiction that the blasting is occurring in, if they had like a number of days that were required ahead of time, the length or time of the blasting. And there were really no requirements that the state fire marshal sets on the blaster to do notification to a local government nor for the public. And then in terms of, like if there will be, if notifying, if how that blaster should notify the public, they were not very clear at all, and they told us to talk to the Department of Consumer Complaints, which is really more of a complaint base.
Yeah,
So,
it's kind of an after the fact group, isn't it?
yeah, so we're like, well, if they don't have an idea of what they require of a blaster to notify the public, and they're telling us only complaint days, then there really isn't.
I know where I go to the dentist, which is at Fox Run, I believe is the name of, which is between Gallatin and Hendersonville. There's some office areas in there. I go to the dentist there, which is not far from the Sumner County, Rock Quarry, you know, right over there. And I was talking to the receptionist down there, this was last year, about it. She said they know what times of day they're gonna blast, like it's, I'm just gonna make up, go back 9 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, something like that. And so they know, you know, and I think that's good that set times with these other neighbors, so everybody would know beforehand that if they're blasting that day, it's going to either be at 9 o'clock or 3, whatever, or at both times during the day. I think any notice that we can give the general public would be appreciated.
Will these, be posted online on the county website?
I'm sure what's approved,
We've got it open.
I'm sure that would be, wouldn't it?
So that is why the codes and zoning is sending it forward to attach a fee to it, so that the fee offsets the software that Rosalie will be able to use, so that it'll be online. They'll be able to upload their, all the qualifications, and they'll be able to do their permit online. So it's less that you
So
actually.
the fee is more or less just to defer the cost to the county
Exactly.
of putting the form online and making it available.
They're just suggesting $100 fee. So.
I would think
Not
that's
to be,
pretty minimal.
yeah, not to be a burden, just to cover any extra cost that the software might charge the county and whatever time she might have to spend.
Seems pretty minimal to me. The only thing I would suggest is on the last sentence there, and we go and have any school teachers over there, we go, where it says the Hartsville-Trousdale County reserves the right. The what of Hartsville-Trousdale County? You either need to name an entity or leave the D out, the V out. It should either say, it probably should just read Hartsville-Trousdale County reserves the right to stop blasting operations. Because by putting a V up there, I'm expecting to see the sheriff's department or the codes department or somebody After that, it's not there.
I'm thinking when that was sewed together from the Lebanon and the Goodlettsville, the V got left in.
I understand.
So we can make that grammar correction there.
That's the only one I saw. I didn't go that far, I don't think.
About their bus garage and stuff like that, and they have signs out
Yeah,
that talk
change
about the,
To already,
like a siren and go off prior to blasting to let people know. So is that something that they would do here as well, or we're just saying that you're not required to do?
There really hasn't been a lot of structure around, okay, what does this process look like? I've really developed a good working relationship with the entity that's coming forward for that is required, asking about the blasting permit and saying, look, this is our first foray in doing something like this. I know you've done this throughout the state of Tennessee. Look at our form. Give us some feedback. Should there be anything else that we should include? And they've been more than willing to, so they've already supplied all the information that we're requesting here. And so I'm sure we can set some type of parameters. What does that process look like?
Right.
And I don't know if that would fall underneath the state fire marshal's regulations of an audible sound.
We had, so the way we asked was, well, what's the protocol for providing public notice that there's going to be blasting? And what we heard back was the blasting company can provide notice or advance warnings, and those are completely voluntary on behalf of the company blasting. So that's what we got. It's voluntary.
oh, by the way, that sentence changed after facilities is in danger, change that is to R, A-R-E.
Now, I know the Goodlettsville, planning department that handles the blasting permits there. They've been doing this for quite a while, like 10, 15 years. And so they've really got a good system going on. And in fact, I think that's where we got the bottom part, we're letting all these different people know. I will find out exactly, what are they doing? Are they doing like the siren or something like that? So I think that's something that we could look at, what benefits us. We do have quite a few hills and things like that. Is the siren really going to be the best mode of?
Right.
I would think
I just noticed
if
that.
there are certain times during the day, if you set times, putting it on the county website, and then Cheese could announce that, Vidette could talk about that, that if, you want to know what time, set times, they could go to the county website and see what those are.
It's gonna be really close to that trailer park out there. It might be the sirens, may be the best. I mean,
Who provides the siren?
they do.
Now,
Jones would provide it. They would do one, and then if so many minutes later, they do another one. And so many minutes again, and then after the third one, it goes
That's
off.
not going to get confused with a tornado.
No, it's more like a horn, not a siren, more like.
I know it was really interesting the last time that we discussed this, the very next day, I got one of those emergency text messages from the county signifying, it was a test broadcast as in, okay, this is the emergency broadcast, that type of thing. So maybe we could, remember, Carol, you were mentioning that we could use something like that. So that might be something too that we could utilize as well. People may not necessarily want to hear the siren, but they respond better to the
The
text.
reverse time on one system.
Is that able to be segregated to area?
Yeah.
Okay,
Because when they were looking, when the police were looking for someone in my area, just my area, got that text message.
because I think that would be ideal, because if they're blasting all the way out on the new road, I'm across town, I'm not gonna hear blasting necessarily. And if I'm out at Keller or something, I'm certainly not gonna hear. So there's no need for me to see that.
But then you might be on your way to Starlink and like, voila.
Well, he would have heard it. So what are we asking this body to do tonight? Approve the language
To approve the language and if,
and send it to the county commission for the possible adoption of a $100 fee to cover the cost of the county, or is that something your committee?
that's what my committee is already doing.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So to adopt this language and pass it with the corrections would be the request.
Okay,
Um,
and it shouldn't have to go back to your committee. We're just talking about grammar.
Yep.
We're not changing the structure of the document.
And my committee's already asking to add some language, this body add language to it anyway. So it's just a continuation of what we've asked.
Okay.
And then if this is approved, it'll go to the full commission to have a fee added to what this body has put in place.
And if it doesn't get approved, bring it back.
Does it help for us to send this with a favorable recommendation to add the fee?
Well, I think anytime we vote on it,
Well, yeah, that would be two different motions. So one would be, if you wanted to pass it, and then if it passes, then to send it with favorable to add the fee to it.
yeah, we can do that.
Just having two bodies saying we agree on this, may speak.
Cool. Doesn't hurt.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So the line of the 48 hours, could you repeat that?
That's why I had it sent to me, so I would have it wrote down. In the event of any operator changes on this project, please notify the planning office within 48 hours of the change.
So last week I received a notice from a blaster that he was going to be right down the road from where I work. Normal protocol, he calls to let us know that there's blasting in the area. David says it's gonna be at 3:30. He can't get the blast ready to do his issues till 4:30. Is that gonna hinder a situation like that where they're delayed by an hour or something due to maybe equipment malfunction or something for? Let's make sure that one sentence still protects them, but they can still get that blast done that day within a reasonable time.
So this language that was recommended is only pertaining to the operator changes. So if the person conducting the blast, say he gets sick or he gets fired and they hire someone else in, they have 48 hours to notify us before he starts blasting.
Your sentence is more about the operator that's holding the power license
The license.
and actually.
Actual blasting itself.
Is to know who the county is holding responsible.
I'm comfortable with that.
I don't think this document has any regulations on how that process is conducted, and
No.
that's what you're getting at, and that you're working with.
This is just meant to be, as we stated in our last meeting, a way of aggregating all the information that you would need to be able to be notified, who to be notified, who gets notified, and if something were to happen, who to contact. Because we don't have any process at this point for any of that information to be generated. Apparently, the fire marshal doesn't have anything either. So
Is
that was the intent.
that additional documentation something that would be added to this permit, or is that separate material that would need to be
I mean, that would be,
signed off on? As far as how they're blasting, what we require in that blasting process, be it, hey, there's.
We have the authority to.
I don't know if we.
I don't think we have the authority.
And I do know there is a little bit of pushback from from some members on the commission that this might be putting too much on the planning office. They like the idea of only having one person in there, because from a budgetary standpoint.
From being cheap.
Yes, and they're trying to minimize having to put any more money into the office. I disagree with that standard of operating the county, but that is their view and they're entitled to. But yes, I believe it would be the commission that would need to come up with those standards of practice. Because it's no longer a planning, permit or something like that. Now we're actually talking about an ordinance that would have to be put in place to make them do it. It's my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, that's not what, we're just trying to be able to notify the people of the county. If the commission. I don't understand that, but that's all that's the only reason this was even brought up. Was how could we,
Or if you have, out there where I see one of the trailers, they have a blast, one of the rocks shoots out, comes to the center of that, well, they're gonna call the police department or the fire department about this, well, they gotta have a list of these people know who to contact. And that's what you're looking
well,
for.
hopefully, we would have that on, but it doesn't get passed, then
That's right. Don't have it.
tell them to call the county commission. It's the only thing I could do.
But that seems to me like that would settle everything. They know who to call. The dispatchers will know who to call.
Sure.
When they speak or call them.
I mean, obviously, if a rock comes through somebody's ceiling and stuff, and they're gonna probably need some sort of emergency help. So I understand calling 911, something like that, somebody get injured or stuff, and if it, if they usually call it cause of fire, whatever.
That's
We just need to know who's all involved so that we can get that information too.
that statement being made, if you look at the bottom of the list, we added the EMS to that list. So emergency services would be also notified of any blasting in the area. So they might have to, might keep an extra ambulance in that time period in case something were to go wrong. And there are times that we have both ambulances out of the county, so maybe they can, since we're gonna be getting a third ambulance whenever it's completed and delivered, then we should have 3 ambulances hopefully by the end of the year, but.
Okay.
Yeah, that was also a consideration that was brought up.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this with the additional verbiage. Your codes and zoning and pending the grammar changes.
Have a motion to approve this, add the verbiage that David has brought us from his committee. Do I have a second? Second by Shug. Discussion, any more discussion, questions? We all clear on what we're voting for on?
So just for clarification, on this motion, this actually puts this permit in place without a fee associated to it. This is saying we want this fee, this permit put in place.
Right. And if the county commission doesn't approve the fee, that's fine, the form still approved. Okay. Any other discussion, questions? Do we all understand? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Does pass. Now, we talked about a second motion. Just, the way I understood it was so that the county commission would know that it is the intent of this body to ask them to associate a fee with this permit, just to cover the cost to the county,
The administrative costs.
the administrative cost of adding a permit like this to our planning office.
And like I said, codes and zoning is suggesting $100. This body thinks it should be more, then you can put that in the
that's
motion, but
That's a condition.
So, with new work, I noticed here that's $100 fee, if the renewal after 1 year. Would that
Yes.
be a-
It would be another $100 fee. Yep. We have that same process for all the other permits that we have in the county, and we were talking with Rosalie about that. We also asked the question, and it was an interesting answer. So what happens if you don't get the permit? Do you decide to go blasting? Well, every other permit, they double the fee. and you pay the double fee, and then you get on the permit process. So a company like Jones Brothers or Enbridge, when they come through with the pipeline, $1 million companies are looking at, if they don't get the permit, it's a $200 penalty. We actually kind of laughed at that, because what's that to a company that size? At the same time, this is also covering smaller contractors that might be blasting to put a basement in or a swimming pool. And that $100 fee might be the difference. At least it covers administrative costs. That's why we didn't go into it.
And I don't think that a company the size of, I'll just mention Enbridge or Jones Brothers, wants to see a story plastered all over the corporate paper, which might get picked up by the other news sources, that they're just blatantly disregarding the permits and things that they're supposed to do in the county. That's just not good business, and that could come back to hurt them in other areas, may not here, but in other areas
And then
of the state.
And then after that discussion at that meeting, Rosalie talked to me about how Jones Brothers had actually been so cooperative with providing all the information and feedback. One of the comments that she made to me was that as Jones Brothers looked at what we've come up with, they said this is the easiest and just thorough, just to be able to get the information there, and they had no problem with it at all. It's the least that they have to deal with in other parts of the state.
That's good. It's not a thing to try to add bureaucracy
Exactly.
to the company. It's just a way to notify. See? Okay. Did I have a motion on the thing?
Not yet.
Okay, I didn't think so.
I'll make a motion to.
I did. They have a motion by Mr. Welch to request the county commission to add a fee of $100 for the blasting permit to offset administrative costs associated with the permit. Second. Any other discussion? Questions? Anything? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Does pass unanimous. I think that's good. I didn't even think of Enbridge when I was looking, but you've got Jones Brothers, it's in the county now. You've got a possible Rockport. Enbridge, if they get that worked out with TVA and all that, looks like that's gonna be a go. They're gonna probably have to do something, and then who knows what's coming in the future. And that's just on a big scale.
And none of us in codes and zoning even thought about the person who's putting in a swimming pool or putting in a basement. And
But those are the types of blasts that are gonna create more problems with neighbors and things like that than these big projects.
which this document will be even more important.
You're at home and somebody's putting in a swimming pool and they can't, you think they're gonna just dig it out, and then they go so far and they can't. And then all of a sudden you watch it, Andy Griffin. Barney, don't know what Barney's blowing up. I think anytime we can stick with common sense type regulations and they're for the benefit of the people of the county, especially in those areas that it's being affected by. I think that's good. Okay. Next thing under discussion is planning time. Planning training, I'm sorry. Bifocals don't go to. So I don't know about how many of y'all, but I watched the film, that was emailed to us on strategic planning and all that. Do we get any credit for that?
You should.
How do I get that? I didn't see any way to put my email address in or anything.
Well, because. Let's see.
It's on
The county forwarded to you.
Yeah.
So that you could use it towards your credits on the honor system.
Okay. Okay. I just didn't know.
Because you didn't register for it, you wouldn't have a way of
No, there's no way. I looked for a way to add my email address or something like that, you know.
That would have been a $60 charge.
Yeah, and I understand you know,
Yeah.
that.
But you can email the planning office saying that you have to do this. That's
I did reply to the email asking, how do I get training credit for this, but I never got a reply. But I would do that. All right, the role of the planning commission,
Take it away.
that's a really good question. You know, as someone, I guess I've been on this body longer than anybody, I guess since the early nineties. You know, just to give you an example of how things changed, when I first got on the planning commission, it was with the city. The county really didn't have any planning at that time. Trousdale County itself, but the city of Hartsville, because at that time, it was the city of Hartsville and Trousdale County. Actually, the town of Hartsville. There never was really a city of Hartsville, it was the town of Hartsville and Trousdale County. And the town had a planning commission, but it was actually a regional, it was made up of the county and stuff. Jerry Ford was the chairman when I first got on. I don't know how long it had been going before then, but you know, the thinking was then, you know, just, you know, how can we attract the industry? How can we attract business and stuff? And so Mr. Ford someone would come into the meeting and stuff. He'd say, come on in here, tell us how we can help you. You know, and not that that's changed any, but you have to be careful with that now. As we do want to be helpful, but we want to be helpful in a way we make sure that it's in the best interest of the county. You know, so we've kind of gone from, we don't really care how you do it, we just want you to come in and build your business, you know, hire some people, you know, whatever. We still want you to do that, but we want to do it so that it's in, you're a good neighbor to the neighbors around you, it's not an eyesore, it's not something that detracts from the county. And that's the biggest change that I have seen in the planning commission, the role of the planning commission since I got on. And, you know, so funny when Macon County didn't even have planning at that time, you know, they actually stole our planner, our codes man. I don't know, I can't think of his Keith something, and he was our fire commissioner and stuff, and did the stuff, and he lived in the Bay and drove down, and they talked him into staying at home and being there. But you know, it is amazing how different things have gone as we've been through. You know, we've been through a lot of planners. First the state was doing it. The state sent out people, and then once the state got out of that role, then Trousdale County has since contracted with GNRC to provide planning services. And I hope the county will continue to do that, because there's no way that a part-time people like that we are could ever do the research and you know, for these type of things, because everything now that we're getting, Enbridge, Jones Brothers, just a huge company. There's no way a small county like us could provide that type of service. You know, because most lawyers aren't, unless they're specialized in that area, wouldn't have that expertise. So how do we want to handle this training tonight?
Well, I've got a deck prepared for you all. It covered the basics of where your power comes from, with the Tennessee codes annotated, and then go through some of your roles and
Hold on for a
responsibilities.
second. Chris, if you see the white, tell me if there's anything I do for it, just let me know.
Sure will, appreciate that.
The roles and responsibilities of the planning commission, and then a few of the roles and responsibilities of the staff that you work with. And then I threw in some BZA just so y'all are familiar with the BZA. On the second page, there's an agenda. The blue color is where I hope to get through. We're not gonna make it all the orange for future. So I'll jump right in and if you, there's an extra copy right there, yeah.
Here, sit down right here.
Come on, let's hear it, Ron. Yeah.
All right, so, as y'all are all familiar, you're required to get hours of credit every year for training, to be a planning commission or a board of zoning appeals member. So just to start and provide kind of a platform for what it is that we're doing and where your power comes from. So the legal basis of planning, it derives from the Tennessee Code annotated. It rests on police, powers, but I'll just run through it. So land use planning and land use regulations are granted by the state constitution to cities and counties to exercise. State legislation shapes the manner in which these powers are exercised, and this continues to change as the state legislators make decisions, and change the law at the state level. The TCA powers granted to planning commissions slightly vary depending on municipal versus regional and of course for metro as well. So again, there are two legal powers that municipalities and counties draw upon. Those are corporate powers, that's your taxing authority to collect money through bonds, taxes, fees, assessments, and then to spend those on public needs. Now, police power is really where the planning commission gets your authority. That's the authority to regulate behaviors, including the use of private property, to promote, and this is really like where the power derives from, to promote the health, safety, welfare, and morals of the public. But this is, of course, elastic. It continues to evolve depending on or changing with community values. And it is very constrained by the constitutional principles of equal protection, due process, and then of course, unlawful taking or damaging of property. So I'm sure y'all have heard a lot about takings and.
I'm not sure I want to have the authority or be considered as someone who is in charge of the morals of. This day.
Got the name. So when you drill into the Tennessee Code annotated, Title 13 is where the code gives municipal and regional planning commissions its authority and power. And again, it's all built on the exercise of that police power. Oh, did you start that? Oh,
Recorded, but it's not live streamed.
yeah. All right, so just I'm gonna start with the basics of what is planning. The goal of planning is really to maximize, again, the health, safety, and economic well-being of all people living in our communities. This involves thinking about how we move around our community, how we want to actively train businesses and residents, the types of places that we want to live, and the opportunities for recreation. The purpose of planning is really to create communities of lasting value. And then our role as a planner is to work with residents, elected officials to guide the layout of an entire community or region, looking at the broad view and how the pieces of a community fit together. So buildings, roads, parks, it all needs to work cohesively, otherwise where those pinch points are, we often hear congestion, school crowding, none of the utilities, water, wastewater, that infrastructure isn't there to support it. That's where you start to see the interactions between planning, engineering, and service delivery. So one of the greatest challenges put to this board and to planners is always to think on what the next 25 plus years are going to look like when your decisions are much more on a day-to-day basis, but looking at the long range of how is this decision today going to impact or affect the community down the road. We know some decisions are easier to change some are a lot harder to change when they get, implemented. And that redevelopment does occur, but it often is a long process, so. All right, so as a planning commissioner, what are your roles and responsibilities? So just for and I guess I should be telling you where I am, slide 11, if I haven't, if I've lost you along the way. This is just a broad scope look at how the planning commission fits in kind of the decision tree. So legislative, of course, is your elected officials. They amend and adopt zoning ordinance and amendments as they come with recommendations from this body. The planning commission, you review proposals and site plans, you approve, deny, or modify conditional subdivision plans. And you recommend, of course, to approve, deny, or modify rezoning and zoning amendment requests as they come in. The Board of Zoning Appeals serves as that impartial, formal decision-making process, and they act in a very specific capacity with thresholds. And then you have the administrative role of staff, where we are here to advise you on the adopted regulations of your subdivision regulations, your zoning resolutions, and then to apply specific and explicit criteria and standards as building permits are issued or approvals are given. So the powers of the planning commission, this comes from Tennessee Code Annotated 13-4-101. And this is pulled directly from them. The legislative body may create and form a planning commission, which they have done. You all are here. You are here so your role is you can prepare, adopt, and make reports on a general plan. Typically, those are more formally known as comprehensive plans or future land use plans. You can make recommendations regarding streets and utilities. You regulate the development of land through the subdivision regulations and plat review process. You can approve or deny variances to the subdivision regulations, as you just did earlier this evening. You make recommendations for adopting, amending a zoning ordinance or resolutions or map to the legislative board, and you prepare and certify zoning resolution and maps to the legislative board. So your role, when you think of it broadly, you're advocates of the public interest in the public decision-making process. You're advisors to the legislative body. You're decision makers for conducting studies and plans. Decision makers for subdivision plats and subdivision variances. And you represent the public, the larger, broader community, not specifically special interests. That's something always to be taken into consideration. All right, so I'm going to go through a couple of these, like what I mean when I say these words. So a general plan, a functioning duty of the planning commission is to make and adopt a plan for the physical development of the jurisdiction, including any area outside its boundary that has relation to the planning of the jurisdiction. This typically happens in municipalities that have like an urban growth boundary, scale or a metro, so you go to the county borders. You can adopt and amend the plan from time to time. Typically a general plan is in place or good for about 20 years. That's the horizon of most comprehensive plans. They typically are updated about every 10 to 15 years, depending on how fast you're growing or changes occur. Now I don't believe, or it's been a very long time since the county has adopted a general plan or comprehensive plan.
Okay.
And it was very active, but it expired a long time ago.
But did you get that picture of it and put it on the document? So we talked about that last week.
I found the NTP, so that's the major thoroughfare plan, but I don't think I tracked down the comp plan.
I'll talk with Rita and see if she can pull a copy. I know the previous mayor had a copy of it.
Okay,
And I'd got to look at it. And it was pretty detailed as far as where growth was going to be occurring, you know, how the schools were gonna have to handle it, infrastructure and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, it covered all the way up to where we are now.
We've just completed the water and sewer, the road through the water and sewer. So
Okay.
those are. It's like I asked anything.
So is it our duty to start to update that, or is that something, I think you were saying that maybe the county commission asked to?
No, not the county commission, that's our responsibility with the help. That's why we contract with someone like GNRC and stuff, they, take our direction and stuff and then develop a plan.
Well, I'm saying to update that plan, is it the mayor or the legislative body make the request for us to?
They should, because if they're not willing to work with it or something, then it's, you know, yeah.
It's not, the state does not require the elected body to adopt the plan. It's a good practice because then they're accountable to it as well, in addition to the planning commission being accountable to it, but the state law only requires the planning commission adopt the comprehensive plan.
So then that, to me, makes it, I feel like it goes back to us to be responsible to create a plan. So that we're in compliance.
Oh, it is, but what I was saying was that the county commission's not gonna work with us and they're not, you know,
There's a reason for us to update it.
as past, things indicate. I don't go through, that's a long process and stuff, and, you know, it's,
ACIP, AIP, ALP.
Right. I mean, it should be done, but again, if they're not gonna, willing to look at it, and do it seriously, then I don't want to waste all it.
Are we in jeopardy of not acquiring funding for projects across the metropolitan government for not having?
Possibly, I would think, but the only one that could answer that for sure would be probably the mayor and the county attorney. But I would think so.
I can pass on conversations where not having a plan has kept us from getting certain grants. That has been an issue. That's why the previous mayor was trying to start a process and COVID kind of shot all that down. But yeah, that was because having that plan is just another check mark on those applications for grants. But I think the lack of understanding between the commission and what they're doing versus what we do has been the biggest obstacle for us, where we're looking not what's affecting you today or even next year. We're looking at what the county's gonna look like in 20 years and how do we manage that growth into a way where we still are Trousdale County and not just a bunch of houses stacked on top of each other. And I think that's where they lose sight of our goal, just not knowing. Over half of them are brand new commissioners. And I think that's the biggest stumbling block. And I really don't know how to educate them in that process to understand we're making suggestions and here's why we're making the suggestions. And instead of just, no, we're never going to get that big. It's not a problem. Kind of a head in the sand kind of argument there. So anyone ever comes up with suggestions, I'd love to hear them.
Coming from a county that has experienced a lot of growth fast, there's a lot of transplant in Wilson County. I definitely, like, what's a planning commission about a plan? And how long have we been operating without a plan?
We've got one, we just feel it. We've outgrown it. It's really.
It's- So I think it would be beneficial.
To start, this has been important.
Yeah.
They can tune in.
I have every intention of sharing this training with every county commissioner, whether they watch it or not.
So, yeah. But yeah, if you have a copy, it was probably done by the state local planning office of that.
Yep.
Different than the metro.
Seemed like it's something that you know.
We might have a copy in like a paper copy in our
Yep.
cold storage.
Paper copy is what I said.
Yeah, I think we do. I can look through, we've got an inventory of all the stuff in our storage. I can see if we've got a copy. All right, so subdivision regulations. So no plat of a subdivision shall be filed or recorded until it has been submitted to and approved by the planning commission. Now granted, there is that over 5 acres exception. The planning commission shall adopt regulations governing the subdivision of land within the jurisdiction. And they can grant, y'all can grant preliminary approval of a plat before infrastructure improvements. You can also grant final approval of the plat, subject to bonds, letters of credits, or other methods of assurance for the construction and installation of infrastructure improvements. I know that's a past conversation we've had, and we did confirm that those do exist in the subdivision regulations.
Well, that actually could become big here in the future with that road coming, you know, the hindrance out there will be infrastructure. So,
So subdivision plats have a time clock to them. The planning commission must approve or disapprove within 60 days after the initial consideration of the plat in a regularly scheduled session. If no action is taken by this commission within 60 days, the plat would be deemed approved and can be recorded at the register of deeds. So it's always good to keep that in mind. If you decide to defer it, you need to take action, either approve or disapprove within that 60 days. Now,
We ran into that with the two.
yeah,
That second meeting, we didn't have a choice, we had to do something.
now plot plans and site plans don't have an expiration, it's only subdivision plats. So keep that in mind. Within 30 days of a receipt of a plat by Rosalie or the county, it must be placed on the planning commission's meeting. And then if the planning commission does decide to disapprove the plat, you must state the grounds for that disapproval for the record. So there's a record of why it was disapproved. And that's good practice for any recommendation you make for the grounds for that recommendation. Now, variances to the subdivision regulations, again, like what came in last night, that variance for the width to lot depth ratio. Variances to the subregs are reviewed by this board or this body, and you can take action on those variances. They can be reviewed and acted on during the meeting without public notice given for that variance. Now state law is silent on variances from the subdivision regs, thus giving the power to the planning commission during plat review. And that's why I reviewed it as a plat and not just as so the zoning ordinance, the planning commission again can make recommend amendments to the zoning ordinance to the legislative body. That is an amendment for a text amendment or a map amendment, but again, we can only make a recommendation. The legislative body is the final authority on the zoning ordinance. Now site plan reviews for proposed developments related to infrastructure and internal development improvements such as roads, water, sewer utilities, landscaping, design features, and other improvements are as required in the subregs and zoning ordinance to go through the planning commission. So, but there's no time clock on plot plans or site plans. When you review site plans and subdivision plats, some things to keep in mind when you are considering them. Always look at the existing street and utility capacities. You know, oftentimes you all ask what's the water line, what's the sewer line in front of it. Those are good questions to ask. There's also the questions of what can the water treatment plant, what's the capacity. That's why we have the utilities sign off on the plats before they come in, but it's also important from a site plan review to ask those questions as well. It's always a good practice to avoid problematic areas of the site. So this is like soil that maybe not perk or bad, like just not ideal for compaction. Steep slopes, always a good thing to avoid or recommend avoiding. Geological features, I know we're in kind of a cave karst topography, so being aware of sinkholes, sensitive habitats and environment. So an example of that is stream buffers around, streams, so TDEC in permitting requires a 30-foot buffer on, streams if it's an impaired stream, meaning if it's not supporting natural wildlife or the water quality, they actually do require an additional 30 feet for a total of 60-foot buffer on impaired streams. Typically, when I review, I do look for that and I make a recommendation to the surveyor, the site plan to add that as a limitation, just so that it's an awareness, but it is a requirement from TDEC, just as an example of a problematic environment. Always check to see if the development fits the site. What you don't want to see is when they come back and say, well, we're gonna need a variance to make this happen because we found a site limitation that we can't work around. So it's always important at the front end to think about what might need to be considered as site plans come in. It's always good to keep kind of a rural lifestyle or appearance, to conserve trees, natural habitat, wetlands, open space, and adequately design for stormwater. State law requires that site or development does not increase stormwater runoff post-development. It has to be pre-development stormwater runoff. So that's always important to think through as you're working through site plans and how they're managing and mitigating stormwater and erosion control. And then always look at design issues from both the short term as well as the long-term costs. Some things that come up are school capacity, how many rooftops is this creating, what's the school capacity, what's our capacity at the wastewater treatment facility, what's our capacity for water treatment. All right. So when another one, or another request that y'all often get are rezoning requests. So a couple of things I threw in here for you to consider when you do receive a rezoning request. What are some questions that are good to run through as you're thinking about it? First one is, what's the current land use? How's it being used? What's its current existing zoning? Does the adoptive plan have a future zone or future use in mind? That you want to keep that reserved for industrial or for commercial use versus everything being residential. So think through what the intended purpose is or the long range viewpoint is. What's again, the availability of utilities and infrastructure, both current and planned. So is there going to be a road widening? What's the water and sewer capacity lines? Are they going to increase a water line or a sewer line? Thinking about traffic, what's the major thoroughfare plan say? Is it an arterial? Is it a collector? Is there going to be an improvement? Another tool that y'all are able to utilize is a traffic impact study. If the development is significant enough that you're concerned about the traffic that it's going to generate, you can ask and request a traffic impact study from the developer to show the number of trips coming in and out on a daily basis and what that's going to do on the road that, like if it's an arterial or a state highway. Always think about adjacent neighboring jurisdictions. So with y'all being on the county line, what's Wilson County doing? What's Lebanon or Mount Juliet doing down on the border? What's Sumner County doing? Thinking through how those intersections of jurisdiction come into place. What are they planning for? What's their service provisions? What other impacts should you be thinking of? And then are there public concerns? Have you received any comments or concerns from neighbors that live near that rezoning? Ask, is there clarity or correctness in the rezoning request coming through? Does it make sense that they're requesting that rezoning? And then if there's any additional information that you need from staff to make an informed decision or recommendation on that rezoning request, let us know. That's what we're here to do, is to provide that information and resources so that you feel like you have the right information at the time. So with some responsibilities of the planning commission, these are just things that I like to throw in. It's not required by state law, but to keep in mind, you have an obligation to contribute. You wouldn't be here if you didn't want to contribute. Your volunteers, giving up an evening, ask questions of the applicant.
Some get drafted, don't they?
He's like, I'm a voluntold person. Ask questions, put aside your own bias. You always have to make the right decisions, not the popular ones. Sometimes those are hard when you've got angry crowd in the back. And always show respect and patience to people coming in front of the board. I've never seen that come from the planning commission, but I've been in front of some that are very contentious and
They test your patience if it's a rock board.
that's true. And always make sure you understand the codes and ordinances and plans, so that you can make informed decisions. Yes.
So I understand so that we are to, consider impacts. And environmental impact studies are being are dominantly driven by federal funding grants currently right now. But when you're also looking at conserving and making sure there's not any problematic natural features, is a planning commission someone who requests a environmental impact study? Have you seen that?
I've never seen a planning commission request an EIS before, environmental impact study. I can look into it. I know you have the authority to request traffic impact studies, but I'm not sure on a full like EIS. Now, when you,
Based on the streams and that conservation, that kind of brings a consideration. And I don't know if there's a minimalization of that study, so it could be just basis on
the site.
the site.
Yeah, so with stormwater, you definitely can request a pre and post development plan to see
Okay.
the erosion and stormwater runoff. Now in terms of other environmental impacts, you can require, if this body wanted to adopt a tree preservation to conserve and protect existing trees, you do have the authority to do that. So there are some things that you can put in place, but I will have to check if you have the authority to request like an EIS.
But the tree preservation would only be in the subdivision regulations.
Unless you wanted to put it in the zone. Or do a standalone.
That was already shot down.
Yeah, so you have to figure out, it would have to be within, it would only fall within the subdivision plat. But typically you wanna do it in the zoning ordinance, so a site plan gets under, it's reviewed with the site plan. So yeah, you have some constraints. All right, any questions? No, we're hitting for 30 minutes. Do you want me to stop or you want me to go through? I've got like positive slide or the slides, pages. Keep going. Okay. All right. So roles and responsibilities of the legislative body and staff, just so you are aware of what their role is and how it relates to the planning commission. The legislative body, again, may adopt and amend the comp plan. It's not required by state law. The planning commission has the authority on that. They will always, though, adopt and amend the zoning ordinance or the resolution and the map. They're always going to appoint members to the planning board and board of zoning appeals. They're never going to issue a variance. And they're never going to decide appeals to the administrator's decision. Those are always going to be to either the BZA or the courts. The role of the planning staff, so our role is to administer the ordinances and the regulations, to inform the general public, developers, and answer any questions that come up. So like Rosalie made note of, she posted signs on the properties to inform and meet the requirements for public good. We review and write staff reports and provide recommendations if we're asked for them.
I like that you put it there fast. Yeah, I keep looking for what's the recommendation.
Yes. I will do.
Now I know, if asked.
And sometimes I do forget, like I forgot on the first one, mine, so if I do that, just ask, raise your hand and say, what, y'all think? Because I do forget. I don't mean to, but I do.
He's been here for a long time.
But I noticed I noticed in a city council, not here, the city council meeting, that they placed in theirs. Staff recommended, and then they also would say, planning recommended. And there's those things that they put in their agenda.
Mhm.
You talking about like Lebanon, yeah.
So that one that I work for. Mhm.
They have their own departments, so.
And they do, they have their departments, so.
Yeah, if the planning commission would like to see a recommendation in the staff comments, we can do that. I typically leave them off,
We've had
but,
some,
yeah.
we've had some planners do that before. Put in. the
It's-
recommendations.
Not, there's no requirement either, or it's preference, so.
That's why we depend on you, is to find out if it's a recommendation or not, and, what's the line when you don't recommend something? And why, you just explained it.
Like I said, we had
Give them
that, and we haven't always taken it. It especially
And that's
comes up with the question of spot zoning, and that's one of the, more, harder things. I mean, you've got a set definition, and that's what they go by. And so.
You just might get
Yeah, I
asked from
don't-
now on out.
That's fine, yeah, I mean, typically if it blatantly doesn't meet, I will put it in there that it really should not move forward.
It's our last, our list, 2-page list.
If it's.
Thank you.
2-page list, it's never getting back to work.
I'll second Heather's, request as a young commission. I think we would all benefit.
Okay. Alright.
Like I said, we've had some do it, some not, so.
Oh, and they're really young commissions. What are the decisions?
That she let us know if that list is enough to decline, if it's favorable to still continue and be passed.
And where?
Like within our vote, if she's gonna if she would recommend for us to vote in favor for it, or she would recommend for us to vote against it, and what are the reasons why she's not wanting us to vote against it? Because she's very thorough. Now, if she's out, she has someone else standing in, and so sometimes we have a little bit of disconnect. We kind of got accustomed and
But again,
comfortable working with
conversation-
you, so we kind of know, but to know if it's, because from what I'm understanding, our role is, if it's law, then we are to push it forward, but if it's not law, then we need to step back and.
Well, that's always been one of the problems, and especially with the rock quarry and stuff. They think, people that don't understand things, a lot of them think this is an elected thing. We're not, we're appointed. And they think that you can come in here and vote any way that you want to. We can't. Our job is to take a project and see, does it fit the regulations of the county? Of our plans. If it does, then, even though you might not like it, you really ain't got nothing to stand on to vote against it. Other than, you think it, well, I don't really want that. That doesn't enter in, but a lot of people, the public, thinks that you can just vote. Yeah, that's good. Or no, I don't want that. It's not that.
That's why I see reason that you need an updated plan.
I'm not arguing.
Oh, I know, and I see the burden that you have faced, I'm sure, in times past, in years past, and they need to adopt it.
Right.
Even though it's created, it still needs to be adopted, and if they want us to stand firm against some things, then they need to make sure that we have those things.
And what a lot of people on the county commission doesn't understand is that once we send them something, that's just our recommendation. They have the authority to change it themselves. That's why you've heard me say before, when we said, they need to debate this, come up with a plan that they can agree on and, get 11 votes to pass, you know, that type of thing. But, too many of them just wanna just shoot it down. That's not doing any opposite good. We're not getting anything done.
An example of, that we all have voted on, I don't know if everyone's aware of the dust up it's now created, the campgrounds up on 231. It fit everything in our rules, our ordinances and zoning. We had no choice but to approve it. We actually took a couple other steps, making him state his phases and to try to protect the community. But his neighbors are very upset.
Then they should have been here that day.
They were.
I didn't.
The Kellers were here. They were, yeah, they were here.
They didn't
speak too. Mrs. Keller, I believe, did.
I don't remember
And
anybody.
did you see?
Okay, she didn't speak here.
No, not, they weren't even here then.
Yeah, they're very upset with it. Bubba has posted several videos now blaming the mayor and the county attorney and, yeah, anyone he can think of, that's ruining his business.
Well, ask Mr. Keller, where's that $1 million that he guaranteed the county would receive if we approved liquor by the drink? And we could afford us, staff and all of this to do that, you know? So, he, you know, he needs to worry about his own before he starts worrying about everybody else.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
And I'll be glad. to-
You're gonna, we're almost gonna get an hour in. The last kind of role from a staffing perspective is, administrative is your legal counsel. Now, attendance depends on the wishes of the board and commission, I'm sure the county on paying the fee for them to be here as well. But it's always good to have one present. They can answer questions on legality matters, but also on procedural issues if they arise. And then the next one is just going to what the Board of Zoning Appeal is responsible for, because there are some things that they have to review, and those are variances, special exceptions, and administrative appeals. So the BZA is required by the statute. Since it's a quasi judicial function, its really role is to provide flexibility to the zoning regulations. They are able to interpret and perfect the zoning ordinance, and provide like that safety valve when questions come up or there needs to be an amendment or not amendment, a variance to the strict standards. Now that's limited. They aren't blatantly allowed to make wholesale changes or grant variances to the zoning ordinance broadly. It's very narrow on what they can grant variances to. And it's an administrative procedure that has to be exhausted by the applicants before it can be it can go to the courts. So there's a question of, as the courts call it, rightness that has to go through the process before they can consider it. So there's a lot more in depth of what the Board of Zoning Appeals does, but this is just one slide to give you an overview. Again, they are the administrative review of the building inspector or other administrative officers' interpretation of the zoning ordinance and resolution. So if somebody disagrees with Rosalie on her interpretation of the decision, they can appeal her decision or that position's decision to the Board of Zoning Appeals. They also will hear and make decisions on special exceptions of the zoning ordinance. So there are uses that are permitted by right in each district, and then there are uses that are allowed by special exception. And those requests go to the Board of Zoning Appeals by the applicant to review. They can apply conditions to those special exceptions, and that those approvals can go forward, or they can deny the special exception request. And then they grant variances to the zoning ordinance and resolution. Typically, those variances are based off a hardship that are specific to the site and they're not caused by the applicant or the owner of the site, so they can't be I built my house too close to my property line, now I need a variance to the side setback requirements. That's typically not really appreciated and frowned upon. You've created a hardship that now has to be granted a variance. So those are the hard decisions that the board of zoning appeals have to make. And that's the end of my overview of the role and responsibility of the planning commission. And I often got you an hour. Well done. That was very good. Thank you.
We got it. Appreciate everybody's attendance tonight. Be safe. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second, we are adjourned. Thank y'all.